Hi everyone, welcome to Promoting Energy Efficient Lighting Systems, or PEALS. Stretch out that E. We'll get started in just a minute. Let some more people come in. The time is 9:50. As people are coming in, just want to say welcome, and we're going to get started in a minute. All sorts of things are going off on my background. I'm going to click mute for a sec. Hello to everyone funneling in. We're slowly gaining speed here. It's 10:01. I'm going to give another 30 seconds and then we'll get started. Don't know what everybody else's work from home situation is, but I have. My husband's a teacher and he's teaching in the next room, and my kids are learning in their rooms, and my dog is just barking. So hopefully she will be quiet during this time. So let's get started. It is 10:01, almost 10:02. Welcome everyone. It is the day after Labor Day. Hopefully people did not forget this was going on. My name is Katie Sealing, and I will just sort of be around to help out, answer questions if anybody has background questions, and Armando will be our presenter. During the webinar though, you're all going to be muted, so use the chat feature in your control panel to ask questions, any questions even to Armando, and we'll get those answered. And he's also going to have some polls, and please participate in those. They're kind of fun to see everybody's answers. After the webinar, there'll be a little survey. It's really quick. It just helps us improve these as we go along. We're all learning right now. And within a couple of days, we'll have a recording of this. Everything will be recorded. So if you have to step away and miss something, you can go back later and listen to it. And there's our email address right there if you need to answer a question or ask a question later. And we are the Lighting Design Lab. We're powered by Seattle City Light. If you did not know, we are actual City Light employees. But the Lighting Design Lab gets to come out to everybody and present education opportunities like this. We work with, besides Seattle City Light, all kinds of trade allies, end use customers, and design allies to create this education and learn from each other. We believe that this is the best way to transform the lighting market. And besides our education services, we have some technology evaluation services. We had a couple newsletters ago. We talked about how we helped do some parking lot lighting studies. we're available to do that kind of stuff. We have lots of tools and resources available on our website, and we work with Nia a lot on stuff like that. And we do information aggregation for things like the LFI that takes place every year, except for this year, unfortunately, and can bring you sort of synopsises of that kind of information. And with that, I will let Armando take it away. Whew, go ahead, Armando.
Thank you very much, Katie. Let me get myself situated here. All right, looking all right. No, thank you very much, Katie. My name is Armando Berdiel, going to be the instructor for our class today, Promoting Energy Efficiency Lighting Systems. I am the Technical Development Supervisor at Lighting Design Lab. I have a background, a schooling background in business, computer science, engineering management. Took a little bit of a deep dive in controls with Lutron Electronics. Then I worked with a Signify and Lutron market partner in the Northeast, working retrofit markets. Good insight into the world of lighting controls, and now Lighting Design Lab taking part of that utility and how utilities help the market transformation end of it, and working on the education and awareness side. It's been a good journey, but enough about me. Wanted to hear a bit more about who's with us in our class today. So I'm going to launch our first poll. Please participate. This one's very nice and easy, but which one describes you best? Are you relatively new to lighting? Want to learn a bit about how to start communicating the value of lighting systems to the people you work with? Are you an intermediate lighting practitioner? Are you just a lighting veteran just looking to stay up to date on a couple of these whatever's the latest and greatest best practices around? All right, I appreciate it. Most people have voted already. Gonna give it 3 more seconds. Let's close this. All right, let's share the poll. How are we doing? Pretty solid. Got a good amount of that mid-career people in the lighting world. Solid amount of veterans. A little bit of people who are newer in lighting. So that sounds great. Pretty good spread. I'm pretty sure everyone's gonna get a little bit of something out of our webinar. So let's get going on. What are we going to be talking about today? Want to ensure that we can articulate and understand those key benefits of connected lighting, that is, the combination of LED and network lighting control systems. Want us to leverage existing resources. Hey, what can we use? What can we leverage and not reinvent the wheel when we're promoting these efficiency projects when it comes to lighting? Navigate a little bit of those financial conversations. What are the metrics that are going to be more impactful to stakeholders? And look at these good, better, best approaches to projects. And when I talk about good, better, best in projects, I'm more so talking the retrofit world, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So what are we peeling? So wanted to give a little bit of a setting the stage, where this class is going to be an introduction to a lot of topics. We're going to go not necessarily very in-depth to any which one of them, but more so enough information to be dangerous as we go on. Please feel free to ask questions if you wanted to get a bit more out of a specific topic or mindset. The slide deck, ultimately, if you download it as a handout, is going to have a lot of links to resources or news sources or different guides and resources that we'll have throughout the presentation. So if you want to leverage those when you after today and you want to download our handout, that'd be good to go. Before we get started, I wanted just to share a couple of just terms and definitions that I'm going to be using over and over. When I'm talking about NLC, network lighting controls, talking about your mid-tier lighting systems that are controlling your lights. But other terms you may hear that pretty much may mean the same things are your advanced lighting controls or lighting controls. A little bit more of a broader term that you may hear recently is lighting systems, or just network lighting systems. So all those almost mean the same thing as your network lighting control definition, which is a way that you can control LED lights in your space. LLLC, Luminaire level lighting controls. That's what you know as your smart fixture, or your fixture with your integrated sensors. And we're gonna go deep diving into those a little bit more than other topics, so I'm just gonna leave that there. When I talk about connected lighting, I am talking about the intersection of LED technology and network lighting controls. If we say NEB, we're referring to non-energy benefits, knowing that efficiency lighting systems provide those energy savings. But in today's conversation, we want to acknowledge, yes, the savings are good, but what else do lighting systems have to offer? And ultimately, another emerging term, smart building ecosystem, or the smart building. The idea is ultimately lighting can serve as a great infrastructure to tie into your smart building. A little bit of how we're going to show today as well. And to get a nice deep dive of some terms that we believe are important, we have a best practice guide, as Katie was mentioning, in our website on our control technology terms. And it goes a couple of pages long, very good for you to leverage, good resource to have. I wanted to talk a little bit about, vague theory of lighting projects evolution, where, let me get a pointer going on here, where we get, hey, at the very beginning, just using incandescents and toggle switches, putting people in construction industry in the mindset that, hey, lighting is not necessarily a big concern. It's just, let's look to put it as a small part of the budget, or the electrical budget for building construction, and not necessarily think about it too much. So that's necessarily governed the train of thought when it comes to lighting projects. As technologies disrupt the industry a little bit, yes, people react and respond. Hey, use your HID for exterior lighting. When fluorescent technology was more efficient than incandescent, that definitely started a market transformation trend. Same with like the sensor switches, replacing your toggle switches with the ones with the sensor, that became a nice trend too. Early 90s, LED starts coming up, but it becomes too expensive, so not necessarily adopted. Late 90s, we all thought that induction lamps were going to be the next great thing. Ultimately, we're now living in a cycle, and I'm not saying that we're quote unquote stuck here, but we're proliferating TLEDs at a very accelerated rate, just because we're on that same mindset. Hey, a small budget of the electrical construction budget, let's not necessarily think about lighting too much. Let's use TLEDs. They're cheap and they can bring some utility money in the table, so always a good potential solution. Whereas the reality is different. Now lighting controls and LED lighting systems do a lot more than just save wattage. Again, they're going to be that infrastructure for smart buildings, and we're going to observe that today. So part of it is, hey, let's promote these types of projects, the ones that promote mindful LED and NLC design to maximize that life of the system, because our lighting systems today are lasting about your 10, 20 plus years, not just, hey, how fast are we going to pay back this lighting system? So with that being said, what I want to do is ask us that we erase our saving-centric mentality when implementing connected lighting. Not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying that, hey, it's one of the tools that we're going to implement to promote these efficiency lighting projects. So if, hey, saving-centric should not be the focus, what should that focus be? Well, first and foremost, let's make the space better for the people using it, whether they be your typical office workers, teachers, nurses. Let's ensure that their quality of life improves after we implement a lighting project, and follow also the building purpose. What I mean by that is, hey, if you're a big box retail store, and that building purpose is to drive sales, to get foot traffic on the store, how can your lighting system help that purpose? Beyond that, we want to ensure we follow codes, recommended practices, regulations, especially in the Seattle and Washington area. The 2018 Washington State and Seattle Energy Codes are all but dotted their T's and I's. So they're going to be coming out, and understanding code and ensuring that we meet them with coming projects is very key if you want to ensure that your building has that certificate of occupancy. And lastly, yes, I'm not even going to call it energy savings. I'm going to lump it all with what I want to call revenue opportunities. We're going to talk a little bit about how aggregating lighting systems data will generate information in order for you to make these smart decisions. And they could be a bit more, even more powerful than the energy savings that turning off your lights when not in use could ever bring you. With that being said, let's acknowledge the facts that yes, the odds have been stacked against network lighting control systems ever since their inception, where they were not necessarily digital systems, more even analog devices. It's like almost coding more or speaking Morse code in order to program the sensor switches to get into the settings that you want. When it comes to these sensors mounted on the walls, ceilings, corners, that have to adjust dip switches to change your sensitivity or timeout, like everyone knows of these dreadful, oh, I'm gonna need to get a ladder for these hundreds if not thousands of sensors because we need to change the time from 30 to 20 minutes. Even when the initial, be it Bluetooth, Zigbee, or just wireless into network devices started coming out, that was great. But some of the first iterations of these technologies, were not the most communicative, had a little bit of signal problems. And when it comes to daylight sensors that had, the misapplications, let's say that you commissioned your daylight sensors in summer, but eventually in winter they were doing the exact opposite, or never turning the lights on or off, and then hey, your tenants are going to get savvy with a Dixie cup technology and just cover them up. So yes, the odds have been stacked against network lighting controls because of these past experiences that people have very vividly in their minds these days. So what's the message that we want to say? So yes, the road has been rocky. We gotta admit it, and there's still a long way to go. But years that manufacturers, energy efficiency organizations, utilities, and everyone in the various lighting and energy industries have come together to ensure that these technologies and emerging technologies are better to use, to implement. And again, the emerging technologies are now becoming the norms. These new features that have been coming out on just industry wide and being adopted by qualifying organizations such as the Design Lights Consortium are ensuring that hey, network lighting systems are now a lot they're more distributed, they're more capable, they have more capability but less complex on how to get to that capability out there. And when I want to talk about your mid-tier network lighting control system, almost always either wireless or a hybrid of wired and wireless, where these wireless control systems have their advantages. The technology to have them communicate is a lot more robust these days, a lot more reliable. And ultimately very scalable. These systems that we're going to be talking about can fit into just one room, and that same system would scale to a floor, to an entire building. Some can go with smart platforms to campuses. So the ability to scale is a great one as well when you're trying to understand how to right size the application and your lighting system. And I know that we were talking about, hey, we're not going to stick with that savings-centric mentality, but the idea is to not shy away from it. The idea is to embrace, hey, first and foremost, lighting systems, network lighting controls provide savings. So where do these savings come from? And I was trying to make the joke, hey, where do savings, where do babies come from? But not, I don't think I'm gonna take it all the way there. But yes, we're talking about energy. The energy that we're saving is power over time. And we read time, hey, the hours that pass and the kilowatts that we use. We usually understand power being that the wattage, or hey, your fluorescent tube is 32 watts. But in order to make a more significant figure that we can read, we're going with the kilowatt hour. That's the industry standard. So it's, hey, how many kilowatt hours are we using over a period of time? And then that's that rate, that kilowatt hour rate. You know, this is a sample from one of the rates on the Seattle City Light website, where for medium downtown network, hey, what are your different rates for your kilowatt hours? And that's how you understand you're going to be paying your energy bill. Converting to LEDs, this is already the mainstream idea. The market has already been transformed. It reduces the wattage from about 50 to 75%, depending on the specific applications. But LEDs, to an extent, deliver the majority of your wattage savings. Adding your network lighting control or your Luminaire level lighting control systems does both. It will reduce your operating hours. It will turn these systems, their key strength is to turn lights off or reduce the level of lighting when you're either not using a space, or if the space would be too bright, then that's when lights will get reduced. And other strategies that we're going to talk about right now also reduce wattage. So let's get into them. So let's talk about 4 key control strategies that network lighting control systems leverage to save some energy. First, let's talk about high-end trim, also known as task tuning. It is the ability for a system to reduce the maximum lumen output of a fixture. And appropriately so, because most people, when they spec out fixtures, they are conservative. They spec out a lumen package. They make the fixtures a lot brighter than the space may need to be. And that's simply sometimes because they're not going to know if the ceiling, walls, and floor are going to change colors to make them less reflective, or if different aspects of the room, the fixtures themselves or a system, are going to render ultimately the illumination be a lot less bright. So people that specify or are purchasing these fixtures are going to be conservative and say, hey, I'm going to ensure that they're brighter than I need, just in case anything in the space changes. And you don't want your fixtures to be too bright either. You want to look at your IES recommended practices. What are the lighting levels? What's the foot candles that I'm going to need on my task plane? And that's how I'm going to know how to high-end trim, or how to task tune my light to get to those IES recommended levels, and ensure that your task plane, your desk, or whatever the case may be, has the correct number of foot candles for it. Occupancy vacancy. Occupancy is a way to automatically turn on lights if a sensor sees you enter the space. Alternatively, vacancy sensor or the vacancy control strategy will turn off lights after a set amount of times that a sensor does not detect you in a space. So again, if you see how we look at the kilowatt hour expenditure through time, those darker spaces here are when a vacancy sensor did not detect someone in a space and turned lights off. Daylight harvesting. If you can get to your IES recommended foot candles or the correct illumination 80% of the way there with just daylight, harvesting the power of the sun, and we only need to get 20% from our electric light, let's do that. Let's leverage daylight because it's there and it's free. It's a free resource, daylight. Obviously, as you see the curve, typically there is a lot more daylight, or the sun is at its most powerful in the middle of the day. So that's why you see the curve coming down here. And when we talk about scheduling, we're talking about turning lights on and off at different periods of time. The example that we're using here, hey, we're turning lights off from 6 p.m. all the way to 6 a.m. You can do it astronomically, such as, hey, at sunset or sunrise, or an offset of sunset or sunrise. And now these systems are becoming a bit more savvy, and the timer, be it astronomic or the fixed time, is affecting occupancy and vacancy sensors. It's like, hey, from sunset to sunrise, when the sensors detect vacancy, let's set the lights to 20% instead of off, just to have a safety background level. And it's a very powerful strategy that we're seeing these days as well. When you combine them all together, you You see the effects of occupancy, daylight, your high-end trim, and it's a pretty and all-encompassing way to save energy. A couple of other strategies that people can leverage in their spaces is allowing the tenants of their space to have personal controls of the lights that govern or are mounted above their areas. And a more utility-centric one is demand response, when a lot of buildings and utility customers are using a lot of their lights, typically be it for cooling in summer or heating in winter or other purposes. If a lot of these utility customers are drawing too much energy, utility will ask them to reduce the energy that they're using, and be it manual, be it running around the building, or an automatic way to do it, buildings are required to reduce the load they have. So today, and this is an image from the DLC Design Lights Consortium, a qualifying body for lighting and network lighting control systems. The story it's telling us is that yes, LEDs, be it indoor, outdoor, drive the majority of these energy savings. Lighting control, network lighting control systems are being leveraged, sure, but are not as impactful as we would want them to be. The idea is that as we get more savvy implementing network lighting control strategies, we'll be able to drive a lot more savings when they're almost at the same level that the LEDs can help us save energy. Did you know, beyond your typical network lighting control system strategies, the Luminaire level lighting control systems? And again, I mentioned them before, these are your smart fixtures, your fixture with the integrated sensors. I want to ensure that we get a very clear definition of this technology. First and foremost, Luminaire level lighting controls are a subset of your network lighting control systems. Like they're a part, or they're a strategy you can implement as part of a network lighting control systems. And LLLC fixtures or luminaires, they have to have these four categories. They have to be individually addressable, so each fixture can respond on its own. Each need to have a daylight and occupancy sensors. Each fixture needs to be able to be dimmed continuously, and they all have to be networkable. And when I say networkable, I don't necessarily mean, hey, each fixture by default is going to get an IP address. No, by networkable, it just means that it can be communicated to very easily. It can be easily reconfigured, whether it be from a commissioning remote, a phone app, a computer program, just a way to communicate to this fixture to change its settings in an easy way without having to go in the ceilings. Good way for us to visually see this is the one-to-one or the one-to-many approach and definition. We talk about, hey, a luminaire level lighting control configured space will have one daylight and occupancy sensor per each fixture. So one sensor per fixture, one load controller per fixture. That is that relationship. When we're talking about your typical zone grouping network lighting control system, we're talking one set of sensors, one daylight sensor, one motion sensor for many fixtures. They govern many fixtures. Again, so these yields a lot less components. You don't necessarily need to have your ancillary motion and daylight sensors. They're going to be in the fixture already. You're going to have, again, part of that will incur those labor savings. No one needs to mount those ancillary devices. Simpler configuration because everything is driven out of that one fixture, and very easily just future proof, because if the space gets remodeled or renovated and changed, you don't ever have to go back into that ceiling to reprogram these fixtures, rewire the zones, anything. It's all just a matter of going back to those configuration tools, whether it be a remote, phone app, computer, and reprogramming the groups in that zone. And as a small bonus, luminaire level lighting control technology automatically meets code. 2 weeks ago, Eric Strandberg delivered Introduction to Codes and Standards, and he talked about the 2018 codes that are coming out just now. So if you hadn't seen it, or you're curious a bit about the codes and how to interpret codes in general, go to our YouTube channel. Great class to watch. I just wanted to bring out the 2018 Washington State Commercial Energy Code, and it's actually verbatim to how the Seattle Energy Code in 2018 is going to have it. But when it comes to lighting controls, we're talking about the code's going to require you to have either your typical network lighting control, zone grouping as they describe in code, or they're going to require you to have LLLC technology, and they describe it as independently configured. So hey, individual addressability, occupant activity, as well as ambient light monitors. So that's your typical your occupancy and daylight sensors. And for each control strategy, configuration and reconfiguration. So the ability to be networkable or communicating to be easy enough to just change their settings. So again, good way to meet code with Luminaire level lighting controls. Just an example of their functionality or what we really when we really want to see the power of LLLC technology. Consider your typical office space where, hey, some workers are going to start walking in at 7 a.m. The lights were off, but rather than go the full bright, we're going to have these lights go on to a background level, let's say 20%. That's going to not hit someone with a lot of glare and where they're probably going to be adapting in a place for coming from like very dimly lit space, especially if they're outside, to an office space. The last thing you want to see is just like all these lights at 100% just beaming out of your eyes. It's not going to be comfortable. So hey, even at the outset, you can start with a background level. Let's say, hey, 9 a.m. the office is more occupied now, and wherever someone's sitting at a desk and actively working there, let's say the lights are at a brighter level, but in areas that don't have anyone sitting there yet, they're going to stay at that background level again to ensure that comfort, but also visibility in case people need to move through the area or watch or see through the area. Same deal, as people leave, their lights don't necessarily go off, but they'll go to this background level, and people that are still working can remain at that brighter level. And ultimately, until that last person leaves, that's when all the lights will go off. Best part of it is most Luminaire level lighting control fixtures operate this way by default. They'll have this controls resilience or default way to operate that give you the majority of the control strategies you need without you even having to pull out your commissioning tool to make them act this way. But what about money? When it comes to Luminaire level light control systems, are they more expensive? Are they approachable? Do they give you good savings? Let's explore that a little bit. I wanted to have this space on the right-hand side. It's an open office that has 4 workstations, and we have 2 systems that do the same things. The first one you're seeing here is your network lighting control zone grouping application, where these purple devices are your load controllers. These circles are occupancy sensors. This one over here is a daylight sensor. And these are your normal fixtures. They're just dimmable 0 to 10 volt fixtures, wall stations at the side. We also have a Luminaire level lighting control version of this space where you don't see the motion sensor, you don't see the daylight sensor, you just see an LLLC fixture that has both. Wall stations remain there. The hub or gateway for the system remains there. But if you see, you even have less load controllers. You don't necessarily, this area on over here, if you're looking at the daylight coming in from these windows, it requires by code that there is an additional load controller just to respond to daylight row 1 and daylight row 2. When it comes to Luminaire level lighting controls, you don't need load controllers at all. You don't need to wire or rewire depending on your daylight zones. It's all taken care of. So let's do a little bit of a study when it comes to the cost of this system. I want to thank thank Lutron Electronics. This is a bill of materials of their Vive system. They actually published the list pricing of their Vive components in their brochure. And again, list pricing is retail, so it may be a little bit more expensive than what people are used to, because distributors get a discount from that list price, and that's what you usually see as a price that you'd get. But this is just your retail price. And if we're talking about this bill of materials, this is your NLC, your non-LLC application, and this is your LLLC application. First and foremost, you'll see, hey, a lot more materials when it's not LLC. However, The LLOC fixtures, yes, they're going to be $70 more expensive. That's the adder to include that sensor. And it's an average because I've seen the prices range between a $30 adder to like a higher end of 120, 150. So I want to say $70 is like a middle tier adder to get that LLOC cost in there. Ultimately, hey, we have, wall station, gateway, and your LLC fixtures. You don't have your sensors, your ancillary sensors and your load controllers here. When all said and done, even in the material cost, even though the fixtures are $70 more expensive and there's 16 of them, there's less cost in the materials and a lot less cost for installation. I'm just talking about how much time and minutes an electrician may budget for these devices. So, you can clearly see those differentials right there in that 4x4 offices with hardware from the same company, ultimately yielding, hey, LLC project cost for this smaller space was around $6,000. For the NLC system was about $8,000. So, a lot more flexible, easily reconfigurable, and for this case, least expensive application to go with. Will it always be the case that LLC is always like, least expensive or the best application for the space? May not always be the case, but in the majority of the time, it is a premier go-to solution that with benefits all around. Wanted to stop for a second, make sure, hey, you're all with me. I'm not driving everyone a little too crazy. So I wanted to launch another poll here. What does that first one in that one-to-one or one-to-many stand for? Let's launch it. So when I'm talking about luminaire level lighting controls, when I'm talking about that relationship of one-to-one or one-to-many, what will designate that relationship? Is it, and by the way, the many or the second part of that answer is the fixtures, one something to one fixture or one something to many fixtures. So what does that first one really stand for? All right, I see people are still voting, so thank you. Coming in. Give it like about 5 more seconds. All right, and I'll stop it right here. So let's bring it out. So hopefully a little bit of a trick question, but I would have accepted two answers here. First answer I would accept is load controllers. In your NLC configuration, you would have one load controller for many fixtures, but just as well, in an NLC configuration setting, you would also have one daylight occupancy sensor or a set of motion sensors and daylight sensors for many fixtures. So those are good answers. Both on an NLC as well as an LLC configuration, they will both have hubs and gateways at the same rate. Like that's not necessarily going to change. So your load controllers and your daylight occupancy sensors are what's going to designate, hey, if it's one-to-one, that's probably your LLC application. So thanks again for bearing that with me. I want to take a quick second to stop. Any questions? I see a note on birds and bees. I gotta love it.
Yep, no other questions.
No other questions. All right, let's keep it on going. So, hey, we talked about energy savings. We think we understand that that is an important driver for promoting efficient lighting systems. As hey, there is a return on the investment, and we'll be talking about that later. But beyond energy savings, what are the systems going to be able to enable on today's world? Let's talk a little bit about the mindset. Like, are people feeling that there is a non-energy benefit opportunity at the beginning of the year, LEDs magazine took that state of the survey, state of the industry survey, and asked a set of the market of the lighting industry about, hey, would you use non-energy benefits as a secondary business opportunity? And about 70% of the respondents talked about either very or somewhat likely that they're gonna necessarily highlight non-energy benefits as part of their business model. Why is this important? Because we are talking about savings, but we want to go beyond. We want to talk about how a building is used in its entirety. And you may have heard this talked about in a different way, but I want to call this the 1, 9, and 90 rule, where, hey, 1%, and when we're talking about 1, 9, 90, the percentages, we're talking about percentages of money for square footage. So for example, I want to talk about, hey, a building spends 1% of its budget per square foot on your typical energy, water, waste, and use of resources. Obviously, this includes your lighting, your heating, cooling, but 1% of your building's budget is going to this energy and resources bucket. 9% is going to what they call your space and layout, your actual brick and mortar. 9% of your budget is going to be that on building costs are going to talk about, hey, is my space an efficient workflow? Do we offer the optimum environment for people's individual tasks, depending on what those types of tasks could be? Do we foster employee interaction? And ultimately, are the bones of my buildings as efficient as they can be? So 9% of our budgets will be dedicated to that. 90%, which is what a lot of people don't necessarily see, can be accounted for when it comes to wellness and productivity. That includes acoustic as well as visual comfort for the tenants of a space. That includes, hey, be it your thermal, indoor air qualities, all your amenities, and how do you promote your employees' health, comfort, work-life balance, and not necessarily employee, just tenants of a space. Because the more you can influence the tenants of a space to be more productive, concentrate better when it comes to school children, to relax when they should relax or focus when they should focus, that can really make an impact when it comes to like the building's bottom line. And unfortunately is the one that's the hardest to track, that cause and effect effort. But even then, you can get even a whole other set of, hey, if you can get that budget of your building and you want to double it, there's a lot more revenue and opportunities that can be gained from a smart lighting system. In terms of information, especially when we talk about luminaire level lighting controls, we're talking about very granular devices that can gather information. And what we want to promote today is that network lighting systems and other systems too, but hey, luminaire level lighting control, a sensor per fixture. The idea is that each of these sensors will be able to gather different types of data and aggregate them at a very high level in order to yield this information that will let stakeholders do their educated decisions as to how they want their building to progress, whether it's renovations, like space renovations, or they want to understand their employees better, they want to understand customers better. Lighting systems can take us there. Oh, let me go next. Excuse me. There we go. Like how today a mix of savings and a few more of those non-energy benefits that are emerging technologies that are a bit more mainstream today. That's what the main selling point is when it comes to, as well as obviously code compliance, promoting efficiency systems. But in the future, we're going to be looking at a lot of these other non-energy benefits to really be that selling point. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the Design Lights Consortium. They have what we call a qualified products list. DLC is a qualifying body that tests network lighting control systems against their requirements and their standards. And if they put them on their qualified product list, that means, hey, this system has passed these requirements and these standards. And I wanted just to showcase, hey, a lot of these systems are getting, you know, features that were not necessarily thought of in the past that are going to do with just system reliance and these non-energy benefits. The split among the systems on the qualified products list when it comes to luminaire level lighting controls and the network lighting controls is pretty even as well. If you are curious at any time, you can actually go to the Design Lights Consortium website and download what you call your DLC, Design Lights Consortium, Network Lighting Controls, Qualified Products List. It's an Excel file. They also have a browser way to access this document, but I like the Excel file better. It's a good file to see the different features that your different network lighting control systems that they test have. At the left-hand side, you'll see the different companies and systems that they have tested and put on this list. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a mix of these features, and you'll have a binary response as to how a specific system, do they have this feature or not? Do they have luminaire level lighting controls? And if you click on that show button, it'll show you how a specific system implements that specific feature, functionality, or hardware device. So great tool to leverage when thinking about, you know, your next lighting system that you want to put on your space. Another great thing to know about the qualified products list is that utilities look at it to incentivize some of the systems and strategies that some projects can leverage. So good to know if a system that you're looking at is on that list. I wanted to show us a subset of these non-energy benefits. I'm not going to go as in depth as in other topics and other classes, just in time constraints, but we want to highlight a few systems. And overall, the overall conversation is that the business model or the value of these emerging technologies and non-energy benefits are not new. I want to call out that each of these non-energy benefits that lighting is now being able to perform has its own business model, its own set of competition, its own set of companies. Like these are four strategies: space utilization, asset tracking, energy metering, monitoring, wayfinding, that each has their own set of competitors. And as a facility professional or a building operator, you don't necessarily want to be dealing with all these different, you know, factory professionals. The more you can streamline your operation and make it more efficient, the better. So let's say you want to approach a smart building, that's a great mindset, but you don't necessarily have to work for each specific capability with a different vendor. That's going to increase complexity exponentially for that facility professional managing these relationships and these systems. What we want to talk about today is if lighting, hey, we have power in the ceiling, we have smart devices in the ceiling, if we can leverage them to do the functionality of other systems and stay just with that one factory relationship, let's leverage that. So let's talk a little bit about them. What is space utilization? We just talked about that 1-9-90 rule, that 9% of your space budget is gonna ultimately go to, is your workflow efficient? Is your space as dynamic as it can be to promote that productivity? Or are your spaces even being used? You know, what is that real cost of having your multi-purpose rooms, your meeting rooms, your conference rooms relatively empty? You see, for example, this is a heat map by one of the Enlighted control systems. And obviously the redder a space is, the more traversed through it has been. And it makes somewhat a modicum of sense. Right here, let me get my blinker again, my spotlight. You'll see is the restroom, the area that is mostly used by the office. That makes sense. But you also see, hey, the conference rooms are here are pretty much blue. They're barely being used. Is that what you want? And that will make you think, is your space being used in the most productive way possible? Space utilization ultimately captures data about the time people spend on the spaces in your office or in your space. And you can have a lot of different ways this data can be measured, hey, over time, or the average hours of space is occupied, or by space category, open office versus conference rooms versus private office. And it's a very costly study. Architectural firms will charge you a pretty penny for something like this. Space utilization companies exist and will charge you a pretty penny for this. And when it comes to lighting systems, today, a lot of them will have space utilization feature pretty much built in, but not enabled by default. It is one of these features that you can say at a future time, or even if at the very beginning of a project you want to quote unquote switch it on. Lighting systems can switch on features like this and leverage them to be very impactful for their stakeholders and the decisions they can make. Energy monitoring, that is the ability to understand, hey, how much energy is my lighting control system actually saving per strategy? You can look at spaces and strategies. Hey, are my offices saving X amount of money by personal control or occupancy? So you can understand what strategies work best for your space. You can also, it's also customary for your energy monitoring to have your control diagnostics and alerts letting you know, hey, a ballast or a fixture is unresponsive, and it can email facility professionals, so it's not a surprise, or tenants have to go to the space and say, hey, a light burned out somewhere, someone can find it. And the beauty of your monitoring is that, again, the data can be aggregated to a room or to an entire campus, giving you a lot of good information to make smart decisions on. Asset tracking, simply the ability to understand if a critical piece of hardware or even a person has gone missing, or where is it in your space. There was a case study at a Pittsburgh healthcare network case study where they were looking at the fact that they lost a quarter of their wheelchairs per year. The case study measured that the different staff, nurses, administration at hospitals, at their hospital network, they were estimating about $1 million of wages lost just looking for wheelchairs. And if they lost a quarter, hey, they spent a solid amount of money, $70,000 on new wheelchairs every year. So they had a measurable problem. They leveraged a lighting control system by Osram, where their Luminaire level lighting control devices and fixtures had these smart sensors that could read the tags on chairs. Again, a feature that could be turned on lighting systems. And again, just being able to understand in a dashboard, I'm sure they had tablets, computers, and phone that could direct people to what the nearest chair was, solving a very key problem. Imagine a healthcare network losing $1 million in labor a year just looking for assets, and very easy problem to solve. And the technology it's using, it's what's already on their fixtures. They don't have to buy new infrastructure for something like this. Wayfinding and indoor positioning is the ability, again, using your Luminaire level lighting control, the sensors in those fixtures, to understand where someone is, and then being able to take that a step further. If you have a specific goal or somewhere you want to go, again, if you have a smart app and you can tie into your lighting system, it can even direct you like a GPS of where to go. Target ultimately leverage this technology. They have a smart platform called Atrius that through, and again, this is the headline from LEDs magazine, the news story. They call them IoT lights, but that's just another way of saying Luminaire level lighting controls. But through their lights, they were doing a couple of things. If we're gonna have these shoppers go into our stores, they may have one of two strategies, and these are just two of the use cases that they highlighted. They may have a shopping list ready of X amount of items. Well, if they have their Target app and our store has our Luminaire level lighting control system enabled, we can look at their list and make a map, a GPS map on the store of how of an easy way to pick up all their items, and they can be on their way. The other strategy they're talking about is person going to their stores, no real agenda, but as they're walking by different aisles, if there's a specific sale or promotion going on, the app will just send you a push notification. Hey, you're by the fruit. Did you know that you can buy, 4 bananas, get 4 free, whatever the case may be? So again, different types of spaces are leveraging lighting technologies to further the purpose of their own buildings. And the idea is to be able to communicate what lighting systems can do. Yes, savings and your non-energy benefits can really seal the deal and drive the purpose of your building. And you don't have to buy a new infrastructure for it. Let's talk about a couple other strategies that can really be impacted by network lighting controls. Your demand response operation, I briefly mentioned it before. The idea that, hey, in the utilities territory, many customers are using too much energy. In the past, we called it Operation Sneakernet, where hey, the utility would call facility professionals, letting them know, hey, you need to tone down, you need to shed a lot of load in your building, be it your lights, your HVAC load, whatever phantom loads, and your facility technicians would just run around the building turning off circuit breakers, pretty much. These days, network lighting controls can implement demand response in a couple of automated ways, be it both digital or analog. If you look at the right-hand side, you can have your typical network lighting control system, and be it at a main load controller or at separate or at specific load controllers at a gateway or hub, they can listen to analog contact closure or dry contact signals to turn a subset of their lights off, or again, they can just be programmed, hey, when this signal is received, you have your marching orders of what lights to dim, what lights to turn off. Same deal with a more digital response. You can pre-program. This is the Lutron Vive dashboard. You can pre-program, hey, whenever we receive a demand response or load shed signal, be it analog, be it through Ethernet, be it through BACnet, let's decrease all lights by 34%, and it'll automatically do that when the signal is received. You can also have, for example, and yes, this is the easy, hey, all lights will decrease by this amount, but you can also go space by space if you wanted to reduce the lights of a room to a specific level. And that can happen if you have, for example, a multi-purpose room that's going to serve a critical function for an event. That space may not need to get dimmed down or shed that day. Tunable white lighting, another great application for network lighting systems. A lot of the research is going on right now, but it's looking favorable in the way that, yes, the ability of LEDs to go to the warmer yellows or the cooler blues we're looking that it is affecting people in positive ways, and I say that carefully because, hey, I'm not a doctor, we're not doctors, people in the lighting world should not necessarily make health claims when it comes to the tunable white light. However, if we are looking at the research and some of the researches, some of the hypotheses are being in their experimentation phases looking good, we can listen more closely behind it and understand that, hey, yeah, the warmer colors help people relax a bit more. The cooler, bluer colors keep people energized and concentrated. The day we do finally get conclusive testing that we can leverage is going to be a great day for lighting systems everywhere. But I wanted to show you guys one of these such studies that the Department of Energy and the Pacific Northwest National Laboratories put together on a couple of classrooms. I think the study comprised of 3 classrooms where each had a tunable white system and a master switch that the teachers could operate for themselves to control the brightness of the lights as well as the color temperature. On the bottom right, you see like, hey, where were the lights more so left? Were they at a custom setting? Were they at your default on? One of the tunable white settings? And again, both teachers and students had some qualitative surveys that they were taking alongside every day to see how the light or the light level affected their mood. Ultimately, a lot of light was saved, and so you can see 71% annual savings for the system that ran. If you see the gray lines here, that's what the fluorescent energy levels were at when we're talking about LED and some of the more tunable white. You know, you see the calm setting and all that, how they all fared in their energy. But when it came down to it, the study conclusion showed, hey, dimming was more of a primary benefit over the color tunability. Not that it wasn't a good benefit, it was, but the ability to change, or the way they described it was going from activity to activity, dimming the lights was very impactful for the school kids to understand, hey, I'm stopping one activity, going to the next. Color tunability was also a good secondary driver behind, hey, stopping one activity and going to the next. Again, just called out a lot of savings versus the fluorescent counterparts. Just mentioning, yeah, the cues for the different scholastic activities were great, leveraging the color tunability and the dimming aspects. And ultimately, it improved the working conditions and learning environment for both teachers and students. So again, while I'm saying, you know, medical, we don't have like the golden grail of medical proof that tunable white systems are really going to impact our biology for the better, but it is looking that way. And the more studies that we can understand and appeal to, the better for the industry. Ultimately, last slide on this topic. Lighting is going to be a connected point for the future, both within a building as well as beyond the building, where inside it's going to integrate with the different building systems, be it security, be it HVAC, be it the fire alarm, XYZ, and be able to share information dynamically, as well as beyond the building. You know, it's the idea that utilities are going to be able to understand a lot more information about how each of their customers operate in energy. So yeah, look forward for that. Integrated building systems and integrated lighting could be a great infrastructure for that. All right, have another poll here. What strategies, and this is more an opinion question, what strategy or strategies should be most successful in promoting energy efficient systems? Oh, excuse me, wrong poll. So again, what strategy or strategies should be most successful in promoting energy lighting systems? Encourage you guys to vote. Thank you guys for those that are already started getting in there. I see 2 answers are the specific favorites. So from your experience, what you've seen out there and what do you believe from these 4 options, what do you see as most successful in promoting efficiency lighting systems? I'm gonna give it about 5 more seconds. All right, thank you, Ray. Let's close it and share it out. So interesting, pretty even split on the first 3 answers. I do see it. Hey, savings for the time being, yes, primary driver. The hard work that we're undergoing now is to ensure that maybe some of the other strategies will overtake savings as that promotion driver. Appreciate that having the same love as infrastructure for connected technologies. That's future-proofing your smart buildings. That's personally what I believe. Directly solving stakeholder problems, definitely, especially if that's how you hear of a potential project. If an important stakeholder has a specific issue, I'm sure that's going to carry more weight as a decision factor. Slightly sad to see, hey, utility dollars and the availability that utilities invest in market transformation is not seen in as high as a regard. But hey, the more people plug with utilities on their more projects, I promise the better results long term. Thank you again for the poll. Wanted to pause for a second, see if there are any questions. I see it, none so far. Again, please, anything you'd want to dive a little bit deeper into, have questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to use chat and share them with me. Right now, we wanted to, so not necessarily talk about good, better, or best approaches. That what we consider a good approach, I'm gonna reclassify that as a better, barely acceptable, better, and best approaches. So when we're gonna talk about retrofit projects, what are options we can talk about with our different stakeholders that may interest them? Before we go in there, why are we talking about Burger King and McDonald's? I want to talk about a tunnel mindset when it comes to your retrofit lighting projects and the spread of TLEDs, your tubular LEDs, where we're seeing common practice, and myself included. In a past life, my role was doing TLED projects day in, day out. But what happens when we're focusing on a very low cost solution that, yes, it's going to get those wattage savings from the LED technology, but not that much else? What do we get with? So this is what we get with. You consider, McDonald's and Burger King. They're known for your fast food, low cost items. So if you see your Big Mac, your Whopper, whatever the case may be, those are your different TLED offerings. They're very readily available from your distributor. They're low cost, but they also have very low nutritional value. While the TLEDs could be a quick replacing solution, you know, the fixture is still there. And if you had something like a parabolic lens or a broken diffuser, the lighting quality is going to be terrible. Then you have to, even before that, you have to understand if the tombstones or sockets are going to be compatible, if the TLED itself is going to be compatible with the ballast in there, if you're going to have to bypass the ballast, it's going to take a little tiny bit more labor. If you're going to replace the ballast as well as the lamp that was there, and if you do that, that's a little bit better. That's almost the McDonald's coming out with a McRib once in a while. Hey, it's a product's replacing your lamp and ballast, and smart enough so that lamps can dim, and that's still on the barely acceptable route if you ask me. But ultimately, it doesn't do any favors to the distributors or the people selling the TLEDs either, because that just keeps driving their competition levels higher. And when competition gets higher, they'll compete themselves by lowering the cost of their TLEDs and ultimately giving themselves very low margins, or whoever the implementers are, very low margins for profit to work with. And ultimately, obviously, not the best project you could deliver the tenants of a space if what you're doing is putting in these a lamp that's not going to be very flexible. It's not, nowhere near Luminaire level lighting control that's going to have that infrastructure for the connected smart building system. We're talking about a very inflexible solution that, again, ballast may burn, lamps may burn. If you go with again, and we're going to see them, retrofit solutions or new fixtures or retrofit kits with controls, those will be, again, the better value for the life of the system, or what we can call like a Panera Bread restaurant in the analogy here. But ultimately, what's going to drive that decision are those decision makers or shareholders, stakeholders that have that same vision of value over the life of a system. But what happens? There's a disconnect sometimes, where we have, be it your cost-focused stakeholder or a cost-focused trade ally or implementer, where like, hey, you're focusing on those upfront costs. You don't necessarily want to get a very complicated network system that you're not going to know what to do with it. A customer does not need luminaire level lighting control. A very inexpensive lamp is fine, or a more complex system is going to take forever to implement. So you can be hearing that conversation, but then we have other voices such as design allies. These are your lighting designers or specifiers for engineers for these buildings. I can't remember the last time I didn't specify NLC or LLC product. And you'll have your savvy building owners or owner representatives like, hey, I need an integrated solution that can give me smart alerts on my phone rather than me having to run around the building all the time. So there is that disconnect, and we have that opportunity as well as responsibility to educate stakeholders as to why spending more upfront is better for the life of a system. It's not like a building is going anywhere. So let's ensure that longevity is a mindset that we go forward with. But when it comes to comfort, and this is a resource that the Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, or NEA, through their Better Bricks brand, put together. You can find the LED pathways. You can find it on their site. Very good to leverage as a handout. I just cut it up in separate pieces to talk about them. But when it comes to comfort, hey, we have 3 categories or 3 pathways. And again, we talked about that good being your barely acceptable. But we'll be talking about your TLEDs, your tubular replacement lamps, new fixtures or retrofit kits without controls. The best solution that we're looking at, that we're talking about here, are new fixtures or retrofit kits with your integrated controls. When it comes to quality of light, again, your TLEDs, you're relying on that existing fixture housing or your lenses, and if they weren't good before, they're not going to be good now. So we cannot necessarily say, hey, because the lamp does not only affect the quality of light, we can't say it's anything better than good, or again, barely acceptable. New fixtures and kits with their new housing, new lenses, diffusers, whatever the case may be, will provide obviously the better quality light output. And again, give or take, if TLEDs can dim, you need to replace a ballast as well, and that's a bit more, again, difficult and complex. And if you're going to replace, lamps, ballast, might as well go with a retrofit kit, or perhaps even a new fixture that's going to have, its own L70, its own lifetime, not going to rely on older ballast, wiring, sockets. Ultimately, when it comes to life, TLEDs will burn out quicker than a new fixture retrofit kit, and will definitely burn a lot quicker than a fixture or retrofit kit with integrated controls. And why would it burn quicker? Let's talk a little bit about why a TLED may be burning quicker or less effective long term than a new fixture or retrofit kit. And I want to talk about our light loss factors. When we talk about light loss factors, ultimately, or in the simplest terms, it's over time, LED lights, or whatever the source, but we're talking about LEDs here, they'll reduce the illuminations. Their lumen will go down. The light will be less bright. And there's a good amount of factors. They're categorized in the recoverable factors. Like, hey, electric LED lamps will have heat, will generate heat. So no matter what, and heat is the enemy of all electronic components. So sure, some factors of just existing for LED sources are going to reduce its life, but some are not. For example, like, hey, Luminaire having dirt, and that's that factor of not necessarily changing a fixture, but just changing the lamps, not necessarily the lens or the housing. Other factors such as, hey, we're talking about your ballast factor, equipment operation, your lamp position. So a good amount of factors are gonna ensure that your TLEDs, compared to kits or new fixtures, are not gonna last as long, or not gonna give you that quality of light that you want. So again, if all you're thinking about is your upfront costs and not the life, you're again not gonna do yourself any favors long term, even that same year if possible. When we talk about utility involvements and incentives and savings, your TLEDs are going to be in they're either moving to midstream programs where you get a tiny bit of savings at the distribution, or some utilities are already phasing out incentives for TLEDs, and they'll give you, your good enough energy savings because you're going from what we believe it could be a legacy source, fluorescent, metal halide, to LED. Kits or fixtures, new fixtures without controls. Again, the performance will definitely be better for your savings. You'll get a little bit more incentivized dollars from a utility. But again, the traditionally better solution, your fixture or kit with integrated controls, your Luminaire level lighting controls, will give you that $50 to $70 prescriptive incentive. Just because it has your motion and daylight sensors built in, your savings will be maximized. And again, over the life of a new fixture or kit, it will provide you the best savings overall. Lastly, the cost. Yes, we're definitely talking about TLEDs are less costly than your new fixtures or kits, for sure. They'll even install for a lot less expensive, but when it comes to maintenance, again, that's when you'll start seeing a little bit of a difference, where kits with and without controls will require a lot less maintenance than your typical TLED application. So big thing to think about. Wanted to highlight, as we're on these good, better, best, wanted to highlight a retrofit study that NIA did with NLC and LLLC technology. And this study came out last week, September 3rd. If you want to look it up in the NIA website, this is a report ID for it. Study they did on the room you see here on the right-hand side. They have 9 fixtures that have 2 32-watt fluorescent lamps each. And this room, I want to say, is 900 square feet. The study basically was they replaced the fluorescent sources with 4 different Luminaire level lighting control systems and 1 NLC zone-based non-LLLC system. And they measured, hey, what it took to put the systems there, and the savings, and how the people reacted to the different options. So a little bit of the cost comparisons for the systems that NIA used in their study. They didn't name manufacturers, but they did have descriptions for each of the 5 options they offered. So again, good study to dig into, and when it came down to it, we saw that, hey, even the hardware, the LLC systems, the 4 separate systems, were less costly than a system that had, they call it the redesign, because you have to work with your market partners, be it your manufacturers or your manufacturer's local representative. But again, the hardware for a non-LLC system was almost double what the LLC systems were for the same exact application. If you want a per Luminaire cost average, pretty similar down here. Another large difference is the labor to implement these systems. There are, around $1,000 for the LLC systems, and $1,600 for that NLC non-LLC offering. Real cost differential when it came to design and specification. The way some of these zone-based NLC systems work, that you do have to ensure that they're designed the correct way. LLC systems, it is a bit more easily to go from distribution, and they did put that in the narrative in the study where, hey, they got a lot of these LLC systems just came directly from distribution and just got installed, and there was a little bit of programming that had to be done with it, so not a robust process as a redesigned system. And you can see, hey, total cost and your total cost for the 900 square feet that was that room. Again, hey, stark difference compared to the LLC systems. So when it came to implementation, these 4 completely separate manufacturer systems were a lot less costly than an NLC zone-based grouping system. This is data that was collected as the time that it took to implement. So you can see the time for hardware install, and this is in hours. around 5 hours for the first 3 LLC systems, a little bit less for that one, and about 7 hours to install the hardware for that NLC zone-based system. Programming took about almost 3 hours for the NLC redesign in one of the LLC systems, but hey, less than 1 hour for the rest. Commissioning, so not just your startup. Again, startup and programming is the first time that a system comes online. Commissioning is a process that goes over time and ultimately takes many iterations, and until all is said and done and tested, you cannot necessarily call it commissioning. And then you'll see here the total time that it took for everything to be implemented. When it came to energy savings, this is the baseline fluorescent system where they use 5 watts per square foot. Again, it's a small space, so that's why we're not using kilowatt hours, but we're using watt hours for the square footage. All the systems, hey, regardless of LLC and NLC, pretty solid savings, but you can see the Luminaire level lighting control systems all had more savings observed and measured than the NLC zone-based system. Almost lastly, these are the annual estimated savings for the different, LLC and NLC zone-based systems. And you can see the savings just due to the high-end trim or task tuning. That's, again, capping the ceiling or the maximum lumen output of the fixtures. You can then see the savings based due to just daylight and occupancy control strategies. Pretty nice, similar across the board. And lastly, the savings, the annual savings for all control measures. So again, pretty good study to understand LLC, NLC retrofit options. Let's not and ever forget the human factor of this study. Again, just to further explain the methodology and the charts they use, the survey and the qualitative measures that the study entailed, I would spend just 2 hours just talking about that. So I'm going to just highlight the conclusions of the human factor for this control, for the comfort and satisfaction responses. So people were most, and just at the bottom, you see a little bit of the different demographic and breakdown of the people that were queried on these systems. But the overall highlights or the more consensus could be brought together to see people were most satisfied with LLC systems being tuned to the IES standard. So that's ensuring that, hey, my desk plane is getting the correct foot candles. And overall, people noticed that the light was a little bit lower than expected, not necessarily the brightest. And that's, and hey, be it due to trim or other factors, but that's not terrible in the sense that the light was also more calming and at the same time helped people focus more than the fluorescent baseline. And that's even when the light was not necessarily seen as the brighter, or people thought that the light was not as bright as it could have been. Although when it came to the task plane in this study, it was people's desks. People did believe the light was brighter at their desk and helped them do their task better. But ultimately, and that functionality between Luminaire level lighting control systems and that redesigned NLC system, there was not such a huge difference in satisfaction and comfort. All right, I wanted to do a quick pause here for questions.
Do you see the 2 that Rose has?
Thank you, Rose. Let me pull them in here. Is there any progress in standardization of LLCs and NLCs offered by various manufacturers? That is part of the concern of customers. They may want to invest in one system that could interface with other components by other manufacturers in the future. So Rose, if I understand your question correctly in terms of standardization, so the industry has indeed captured this problem. What we're talking, not necessarily a problem, but the opportunity. What we're talking about, hey, it's a very realistic scenario where part of my building or even part of my floor will be one system, and the other part of the building or part of a floor can be another system. It's a very realistic scenario. Manufacturers are aware of it, and what's happening right now is a lot of the manufacturers, and I believe all ultimately are going to be developing APIs or oh my God, I forgot what API stands for, but ultimately they are network ways where system A can talk to system B or integrate with each other. So for lack of, for forgetting what API means, I'm just going to say yes. There is going to be a way where systems are going to communicate with each other in a very easy manner. It'll definitely take a network connection. You're tying into a network and having a system have one IP address, tell the other system's IP address, hey, I'm sending this command. So that is going to be happening in the very near future, and it definitely happens today, some one way, shape, or form. Sean, I appreciate you. Application programming interface. Manufacturers are developing APIs, application programming interfaces, in order to have systems talks with other third-party systems, be it other NLCs, be it HVAC or other building type systems. Last question I see here, how can nonprofits trend toward LLC if inadequate funding is available? Rose, I'm gonna put a pin on that one. I'm gonna wanna have that conversation offline with you on that, because it's a great topic, great question, but it'll take a lot of time for us to dig into it here. So putting in a pin, nonprofits towards LLC on funding. Just because I want to double check on our conversation with TLEDs, I have a couple of options on the board, but from all of these options, and you can choose more than one, which is not a TLED limitation, constraint, or concern. That means all of the other options are TLED limitations, constraints, or concerns, but there may be one or more than one option that is not. So I'm seeing people starting in voting. So you'll see there again 4 answers that are TLED limitations, constraints, concerns, but one of them is not, because LLC systems, NLC systems, and TLED based systems will all have that same concern. Which one would that answer be? And again, I said there could be one or more than one answer, and I see actually from the people that have voted, they've only picked the 2 answers that I had in my head. That is great. Might leave it open for like 5 more seconds. All right, thank you, everybody. Let's share it. So very correctly, most people did call out, hey, wall station confusion concerns. Yes, the wall stations are going to be the same for LLC systems, NLC, and TLED systems. So that's not necessarily a TLED specific limitation. And light quality, as I badger and I say, yeah, TLED application will be most likely to give you light quality concerns. It's not necessarily specific to it, and it's not necessarily to say that a LLC or NLC system was applied correctly, installed, or implemented correctly. So yeah, light quality concerns could occur across the board as well. Although I'm gonna say TLEDs will have the more likely technology or approach to have issues with light quality. And daylight zoning, I want to say true. NLC systems will also have some circuiting concerns when it comes to meeting code and daylight. So I'll accept that in there as well. I appreciate the Mavericks that went for that one. So let's talk a little bit about, hey, delivering the right projects, a couple of barriers that we've seen, and some solutions to these. And I'm gonna start just the conversation of, hey, the very nice term that the budget controllers love to hear, value engineering, because that usually means reducing upfront costs in order to make a project more approachable to most people. But interesting thoughts when it comes to value engineering, because ultimately, hey, it does remove the sometimes vital hardware or features at the last minute to help that upfront cost. And if you notice this trend of a lot of the building contractors, they love to upsell to the next level of feature, security, whatever the case may be. Electrical contractors typically downsell solutions. They're typically the ones that like to offer value engineering options. If you see on the right-hand side the image, hey, as you reduce some of that vital hardware, some of the vital features, you definitely are gonna save a lot of money when it comes to like your pre-implementation steps in the construction factors. But once you actually start constructing, and you're understanding that labor installation is getting a lot harder, or programming the system because you didn't get the app that sees everything, it's getting a lot manual and a lot longer, complex, terrible. Or once the system's actually up and running and it's not saving nowhere near the energy it could have saved because you don't have that capability built in, or you're not tying into your building management system and not necessarily going for those emerging IoT technologies, you're not necessarily losing money, you're just losing revenue opportunities. So even just puddles where you can get additional revenue opportunities from. So when we think value engineering, I want more so people to think about the fact that, hey, true value engineering may even add upfront cost to a project in order to reduce the life cycle cost. So it's that inverse relationship we need to think about. It's better to spend a bit more now in order to save exponentially in the future over the life of a system. And we talk about, hey, the life of a system could typically be 10 years, but knowing full well that a lot of the systems now can last beyond 20. So again, it does pay to spend a bit more on the upfront and save 20 years from now. What's a major factor that is going to impact, be it value engineering, what features get implemented, what strategies going? It's about communicating to all of the relevant stakeholders of a project, not just the decision maker. And that means not just the person that approves the project or approves the budget. There needs to be like a comprehensive buy-in for many dimensions of stakeholder in order to ensure that not only the correct NLC system is implemented, but the features that go along with it are there as well. We at the Lighting Design Lab want to highlight 4 main types of stakeholders, and that's your tenants who live with the system. These are the people that we want to improve their lives. We want to implement efficient lighting systems, sure, to save money, but to ensure that these people's lives are enhanced and improves, depending, hey, be it the tenants being teachers or K through 12 students, be them the people shopping in a store, nurses, whatever the case may be. They are the ones that don't necessarily want to see lighting maintenance issues go unattended. They want to have a seamless move through their office. So getting buy-in from them as they can talk to their facility professionals, facility owners, good to have buy-in. Same with the facility professionals. Building operators, facility managers, they leverage network lighting systems. They and not just network lighting systems, they leverage the majority of the smart building systems that they work with. And as always, there's going to be that learning curves. If they want to change any type of setting, the main points to reduce the number of times facility managers have to call the factory. Hey, how did I do this? How do I understand how the system is operating? So again, getting buy-in from facility professionals, letting them know, hey, this system approaches simplicity in operations this way, flexibility of controls in that other way. On the flip side of that spectrum are your implementers, your trade allies, contractors, installers, electricians. Again, they implement the systems, but they also have skin in the game. Like, why work with them? Why would they want to work with you on a project? And also they can provide that subject matter expertise, and the idea is that implementers should be able to offer the knowledge of, hey, how can you leverage the system? And ultimately we have your owners representatives. and more like a hybrid between tenants and owners, but user groups. User groups could be different types of groups within a building that are gonna use this system in one way or another. But again, be it owners or owners reps, they're the ones that are investing in the system. They're more vested in the building itself, that structure that's not going anywhere. And that's why it's important for the owners that the system be optimized and efficient. And again, buy-in from these different dimensions will take that project all the more further. Got to remember that there are definitely recommenders, influencers, and gatekeepers. The better that you can understand who is who, whether your different user groups, your different types of stakeholders, who likes this emerging lighting technology, who's going to be a gatekeeper because they don't necessarily understand how the emerging technology in lighting operates, who's going to recommend me to the decision makers. Again, getting buy-in early for the different user groups is extremely important. Yes, it is complex. Yes, it's going to take time, but very vital and important. Prime example of this is a project that I worked on 2017 in NYU. We were doing a smart TLED pilot for a floor of one of their academic buildings. And Luminaire, the manufacturer, is going to donate the gear for the floor. I forget how many lamps it was, but it was a good amount. So NYU was very happy that this was gonna, that the manufacturer was donating this. We're gonna help a lot with the labor, and we're gonna have a nice pilot to see if they adopted this approach to the entire building. One of the 2 weeks leading to the actual install, we learned that each of these smart lamps is going to require an IP address to be on the client's network. And as soon as we communicated that requirement to the IT department for that building at NYU, they said no, there's no way that that's going to happen. They were, it's a no for me, dog, if you're looking at the American Idol image. There was no way that the IT department for that building was going to lend an IP address for each of the lamps, and that just quickly killed the pilot and project thereafter. We had to go with another solution, even when the lamps for this pilot were all donated. So again, your stakeholders and their buy-in is extremely key and important. So how do you size message and the message for the people that have to hear it? How do you ensure that you're getting the buy-in from the different dimension of stakeholders that you want? And hey, that starts with that relationship and having those conversations. Having the conversations with different people that you can actually get the ear for. You can ask him about processes. You can ask him, get from point A. How do you approach to making these decisions? Who is it going to affect? Just by having that conversation, you're going to be able to create that map of stakeholders, what's important to each type of them, what are their needs. Again, creating an influencer map is very useful when you're talking about the ultimate sales outcome for a project. But be wary. Don't force the horse. Do not be that solution looking for a problem. Don't say, hey, my NLC system can do everything under the sun. What did you want it to do? It can do these 25 things. The way it should work is the other way around. You don't necessarily become a lighting professional. You become a business consultant. You talk to the different stakeholders. Hey, what are the opportunities or problems that your business is facing? What are the metrics? And from there, the lighting professional will have the crazy task of taking a business problem and seeing how can an NLC system with the capabilities that I know that I can leverage solve that problem, And that goes back to tying in with a building's purpose and goals. People just want to ensure that there's customer satisfaction in their space. They want to reduce their carbon emission. They want to meet code. They want to drive foot traffic or sales. Ultimately, lighting professionals, especially on the sales end, they have to foster these relationships through, constant and evolving education, awareness, and continuous improvement and optimization. So again, that subject matter expertise relationship is very key when it comes to promoting lighting efficient systems. Let me pause for a moment. I want to see if there are questions. I do see a question. We did a TLED project where we were very much concerned with a dimming TLED that would fit the dimming ballast in our daylight zone. So more a comment here. And yes, I see it. So there's more a comment on my previous questions. It's like, hey, TLED, yes, about the question on TLED being a concern on daylight applications. Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. Closing out here, and I may breeze through this section just in the essence of time, but I want to highlight a couple of key factors in that. The discussion of the cost of waiting, implementing efficient lighting projects, there is going to be a cost to not do anything. And that's the risk of utilities running out of funding and not being able to invest in the project. You'll definitely be overspending on energy, as well as the labor it may take to change lamps that burned out or whatever the case may be. Your existing equipment may be nearing that end of life mode. You'll have stakeholders that have their problems that are not solved. And the longer you take on a project, the less that initial buy-in you get is lost. So again, cost of waiting is very key when it comes to lighting systems and urgency. You can drive urgency by making people aware of these factors. When it comes to communicating financial metrics, there are two more known numbers people communicate. Number one is a simple payback. And the way it works basically is like, hey, let's say you have a specific investment. Let's say you're spending your $100 over how long will I recoup that investment? That's what the simple payback is. And in very simple terms, like, hey, let's talk about these savings in years. Like, hey, year one I got $40, year two I got another 40, so that's 80. Year three, or halfway through year three, I'm getting another 20. Meaning my simple payback or the time it takes for me to regain my investment is these 2.5 years. And that's the same deal when it comes to lighting. If my lighting project is going to cost $100,000, how quickly am I going to recoup that money? And there are pros and cons to this metric. Some of the pros are it's not a complex metric to arrive to. If you understand the cost of a project, and the baseline of that project. So like if you understand how much energy, how much the cost of energy is for that specific site, you'll be able to arrive at a simple payback relatively quickly. So it's a good, quick measure to communicate the effort and the return on investment a project is going to give you. So what's the real issue is that the real story is a bit more complex. But hey, we're still talking about your simple payback. The way that I like to think about it is, hey, it's the cost of the project. That could be your materials, labor, services, warranties, everything under the sun, minus utility rebates, right? So you have ultimately the net cost of your project, and you divide that by your yearly savings and your deferred maintenance, because a new system is going to need to be maintained a lot less. So that's definitely a factor to account for. So that's usually how I think about how to get to that simple payback. If you think, hey, an entire project cost, hey, let's say this project is going to cost you $20,000 and the labor to install is going to be $5,000. Here's my net cost. However, I have a rebate of $3,500. So we take this, the net project cost minus the savings. You divide your savings for this project. That's you arrive at your 2.91 years simple payback calculation. The other metric, it's a lot more complex, but it's one that I'll be in favor of communicating. It's a life cycle cost analysis that deals with definitely the same factors that simple payback does, but it just goes a lot beyond. you think about, hey, and I'm talking about, hey, an NLC system can last, again, 20 plus years, although 10 is a good conservative number that everyone can stay behind. And hey, we want to talk about the entire life cost of this system, from your initial, materials, your design, hey, how do we deliver, install, and commissioning? And hey, we also want to calculate the estimated savings here, your non-energy benefits. Can we have a quantifiable way to capture the revenue? And we do have quantifiable objective ways of getting energy monitoring to understand savings. But then, hey, we also want to understand over the time, that energy fluctuation, as well as the maintenance that the system does have to entail. And maybe sometime during the life cycle, there were optimization visits where, sure, that visit did incur a little bit of cost, but then the energy savings and the non-energy benefits really grew exponentially. And ultimately, it all ends at the disposal or decommissioning phase. Again, in the interest of time, I am going to skip over a little bit of time value of money conversation, but the key takeaway is that I want to ensure that people focus on communicating to a stakeholder in an economic metric of their choosing. Some people like to focus on present value, net present value, return on investment, or your internal rate of return. With a bit more time, would love to go into these, but not going to be able to the detail that I would want. Just wanted to showcase that, again, communicate to your stakeholders on the metric that they prefer. This is a simplified 10-year example where, hey, a lighting system, the cost of implementation is about your $65K. There's a rebate reduction where, hey, so my total investment is, $50K, a lighting system. And this is a story that, hey, anyone would be able to tell a stakeholder where, hey, over year, although there definitely should be some maintenance and operation cost, but year over year, you understand, hey, what are your energy and maintenance savings? How does that affect, that initial outflow or the cost of the project? And ultimately, the story you want to tell stakeholders are the different financial metrics that would go along with the inflows and outflows. Key communication piece as well to different stakeholders are proposals. When someone is presented with a proposal for a project, a couple of guidelines that would be very, very key to follow. Hey, definitely have a subtitle first and foremost. It should be in like a third person, non-authoritative language. It should hit like that problem statement. What did we come here to do, and how did this target highlight the way we solved our project, our problem? Quick financial summary, so not necessarily the whole story. And what is that call to action, which in a lot of the senses would be a purchase order. But yeah, quick, brisk example, you have your clear, bolded title and subtitles. Like, hey, and it's both quantitative and qualitative. You get, hey, 20% more light, 40% lower energy cost, your garage at 123 Project Street. And hey, subtitles calling out some qualitative measures that the project is also delivering value on: security, energy savings, operating cost, and hey, boosting Energy Star score. You got to highlight your pluses. The problem statement to improve parking area lighting with energy efficient, long-lasting LED technologies. Hey, what was that problem statement? How did we address the project statement, and what are the financial highlights? That's what you want to hit on your proposals. The what, definitely with a subtitle highlighting the qualitative stuff, the problem statement, how you address that problem statement, and just the financial highlights. Then you can follow with however many appendices you want to explain these pieces right here. And when it comes to financials and helping with the financials, a business model that has come up and has been an emerging model is this energy as a service, or lighting as a service, energy efficiency as a service, call it Netflix and lit. It is a way to pay for a lighting upgrade as a subscription. What does that mean? For the project site, for the owners, there's going to be no real upfront capital costs. There's no need to pay for equipment, commissioning, maintenance. A third-party provider with whoever is your energy as a service provider will take care of those payments, as well as the maintenance and some metering. So what do they get in return? So they're paying, pretty much taking care of everything. You get your upgrade project. However, from that project, you are going to realize energy and savings in the factor of your electric bill is going to be a lot lower than you thought it was going to be, because you have that project. So from those savings, these companies that provided the project are just going to take a part of the savings, and that is how they get their revenue. But that also ensures that the site and the building stays cash flow positive. So they're not necessarily like losing capital in the transaction at all. They're just passing along some of the savings to the main implementers of the project. A provider of this service or business model, Seattle City Light, they have a new energy efficiency as a service pilot. If you Google their page, you'll see, requests for projects on their pilot. You'll see of June this year, they had a project at the Bullitt Center, a very energy forward building in Capitol Hill. So if you if you're curious of one of their success stories, please check out this news story. But very high level, the way that Seattle City Light implements this project is that, hey, you remain bill neutral. So your energy bill is not going to change. What's going to happen is that they're going to facilitate a retrofit or upgrade project to occur. The idea is that after that project occurs, with their metering, their smart metering in place, you should definitely see a savings in your expenditure. That dashed green is the expected savings. And what happens is that the customer remains energy neutral, but so their bill does not change. They just have their new upgrade project, and the savings realized is what they're going to use to pay for that project. So their bill stays the same, but they have, brand new NLC system if you'd so wish. When it comes to, budget conversations, objections, helping with the budget, I wanted to highlight another resource. I thought it was going to be just great for people to know. But right here in the Pacific Northwest, in Washington, we have our Trade Allied Network Northwest. They are a government organization that can be both the boots on the ground as well as think tank on energy projects. And they develop every year what they call their field guide. It is a great guide that has tips, tricks on both lighting as well as HVAC technologies. One section that I really like to see that they always build on is something they call "If They Say, You Say." An entire section in their handbook dedicated to, hey, if customers have budget-related concerns, constraints, there's some solid strategies as to what answers people can provide to make those stakeholders feel a little better about the project and how it's going to be implemented. So another good resource I wanted to highlight. Coming to a close here, just wanted to highlight again a few last tools and teamwork to make the dream work. Very topical as 2018 codes are about to be to come to light, and they're going to be listened to. Hey, new codes usually mean a lower lighting power allowances, lower power densities. Codes also dictate, hey, if you're doing a renovation to a percentage of your fixtures, you may need to apply controls in XYZ. So, hey, codes are another tool you can leverage to promote these efficiency lighting systems. Great tool to start the conversation is the lighting audit. We have an audit and retrofit class that if you hadn't checked out this year, we have it recorded again on our YouTube channel. Very solid. But audits are basically, and I've done my fair share, run through a building to, again, if you see on the top right, you go through each fixture, understand the source, the application, and understand ultimately a benchmark of the existing conditions. And this happens for the entire building, showing you a little bit of an example of a generic audit where, hey, you have all the information of a building or a project where you have the location, the locations, each room. You want to break down each room in an audit. You want to break down each lamp system where, and I'm going to go a little bit quickly, I'm sure, but hey, when you know that the wattage of a lamp is ultimately not going to be the wattage of the fixture system, because the ballast factor plays a role, and you want to really understand what your energy usage is for each fixture in a space. You can, in an audit, you can also propose solutions, and you can have the calculation of the wattage of the proposed solutions. You can ultimately get at your energy savings that you'll see on the top. You can understand if there's going to be any rebates in the calculation. Also take into consideration lamp and ballast maintenance. If you're not using legacy technologies, the new lights are not going to burn out as much, and the materials and labor part of this maintenance is definitely going to be a factor that you can provide as additional savings. And ultimately, you can also do the upgrade estimate calculations. You can get a lot of information, both economic and energy, from your audits. And again, you can do it all Excel, you can do it all on paper, and there are software pieces that can help you with audits themselves. Had an interview with a energy manager that I had worked with in the past for Weill Cornell Medicine in New York. Told her that the lighting audit was the favorite part of the process because it let her know that there were T12s in their back of house. The auditor was able to tell them how to deal with cold storage locations. They just wanted to deal with their simple payback financials and maybe ROI. They prefer simple payback over internal rate of return, or ROI. They appreciated the fact that they did not need a software contract at the end of the day. And it could be an easily reprogrammable solution that we proposed. Why do utilities like City Light care about connected lighting? Ultimately, because they can still be part of reducing energy on their sites. That means they'll be able to have more energy to distribute across their customers or resell. Utilities want to provide that elite customer service to continue to work with their customers for continuous improvement and stay relevant as connected IoT devices proliferate both in residential and commercial markets. Wanted to call out City Lights, done a great job in right-sizing the approach for performance and expected savings for your NLC or LLC strategies. Again, LLC strategies are given an additional incentive of $50 in some utilities, $75 in a few others, excuse me. A bit more on the requirements for City Lights. $50 fixture prescriptive incentives is that you do have to have a DLC, network lighting control, qualified product listed system. You need to demonstrate that you've programmed high-end trim, occupancy, and daylight harvesting, a minimum of 2 zones per 300 square foot. Before you install the project, you need to showcase your sequence of operations and a floor plan. And after the install, you must provide the utility as-built, and then you need to do their site visit. What you cannot do is, for your $50 fixture incentive, is have T-LEDs or fixtures under 20 wattage. If a high-end trim does put your fixture under 20 watts, you prorate the $50. So the percentage of a watts under 20 is going to be that percentage of dollars on the 50. I was going to highlight a few last tools. So the ones that I'm going to highlight before I leave it off with Katie are a few tools from LDL. And that's just going to be, hey, continue plugging in to the education and awareness programming that Lighting Design Lab has. We are a resource of the utility that just provides this education and awareness. Plug into our classes. We also develop best practice guides, lighting resource guides, different definition terms, as well as videos that can help paint a picture of how lighting, implementing efficiency lighting can be good for your space and how. Please leverage our guides and videos. You'll see them on our YouTube channel or our website. We also provide project-specific consultations and mock-ups, where if you have a question, you can definitely email our lighting design lab at seattle.gov account, and we can have conversations. We can do some modeling. We can do some live mock-ups. Lastly, stay tuned. LDL, we're doing a lighting user experience study, and we're going to be investigating a little bit or taking a deep dive on wall stations and configuration tools. We want to understand and how can we increase user acceptance of these systems when they have a better interface and experience. Pause. Anyone has any last questions? I see no.
There was one last from Matt.
One last one from Matt. I apologize. Matt, I see your question. I am going to, you know what, develop a bit more comprehensive life cycle analysis spreadsheet and send it over to some of the people in this class. If that sounds fair, I'm gonna go with that route. But I appreciate that note. I want to make it a bit more comprehensive, and I'm gonna ship that out. With all that being said, thank you for everyone for plugging in, participating in the polls. I'm gonna transition over to Katie. And I didn't give her any time to close out, so I'm sorry.
Okay, bye. Thank you, Armando. That was awesome. I can hear the applause coming in. You can't hear it. It'd be too loud for you. Thank you, everybody, for attending after a long 3-day weekend. Do you want to transition that slide, Armando? Do you have our next classes on there? Just real quick, you can go to our website and see our upcoming classes, a quick look at them right there. And let's thank Seattle City Light again for their leadership and commitment to the Lighting Design Lab. Again, there's our email address, there's Armando's personal email if you think of something after this class. And real quick, a few of our sponsors this year, the slide is stuck for me, there it is. BPA, Chelan County, Tacoma Power, Idaho, and Snohomish County PUD also sponsor our education and resource guides and other things. Thank you again for bearing with us going over time a little bit. Make sure you take the survey at the end so we know how we are doing and can continue to bring you great content from Armando and the rest of our educators. All right, have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.